Okay, let's go with that today. Not working. That sounds like it. Good morning, online. Good morning, Rumbling Geek. I feel like every muscle in my body is aching. You will go and do foolish things like landscaping. Not made for landscaping. Learned a long time ago. I can't. If my brother's doing something, he couldn't pull me into things because he and I do not work well together on that sort of stuff. Sit down and play a video game, absolute perfection. But do something that he's very, very good at, or I'm very, very good at, and he's not. No. Maybe. Raid from maybe. Hello, how you doing? How are things? LJ, hello. Hope you're well today. Welcome in, Raiders. It's a great start to a stream. Good morning. Or good day. How was your stream? What did you get up to today? I've been wanting to return the raids. I very much appreciate that. That's very nice of you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's lunchtime there for you. Working on your app? Sleep? Sleep's overrated. Got my I've got my new equipment coming for my CPAP machine soon, so hopefully that will help my sleep. But yeah, sleep is for the weak. I need more hours in the day anyway to do Liquid Sky, so I should buckle down on that. So today's stream is going to be regarding getting. Let's see if I can get this up and running again. Things weren't working properly, but that could have been because of the machine restart. Okay. Today's focus is going to be on I find this is taking longer and longer. I think it is actually doing stuff. User profile. They're asking for that too soon and they're crashing it. But if I refresh, we get nothing. Awesome. There we go. Now it's pending. That's the user profile. Okay. Is there a window in front of me? Yes, there is. The sun will shoot in through the blinds. I need to get new blinds. Okay. So today's job is, well, twofold. First, I want to get another feature in there, which is the ability to show the tasks for a requirement. So I'll list the tasks down here. Not sure how that's going to look, but we'll have a play. Dota, good morning, by the way. Sorry, that was rude. So as I add a task, I want to show the tasks in the side panel so that we can actually understand what tasks are being worked on or being attached. I don't think that's going to be the final version of this, because I think that's going to get too messy, because I think that you can end up with many tasks against a specific requirement. But I want to get the idea in there so that goals maybe. I mean, these are the tasks, right? These are the actual tasks that we're going to add in. Right now, what I'm focusing on is trying to make it as clean as possible. However, if I can manage to get someone who's good at UI UX involved in the project and can give me a workup, then at least the information's there. So awesome. Okay. It should be back. Yep. Okay. OBS just errored and said the stream key was invalid. So I just restarted OBS. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay. So for those of you new to the stream, what I'm working on in these streams is a project management and planning tool. So I have my own opinions on how software can be developed. I have my own opinions on where we are lacking and where we are putting too much pressure on developers to own understanding where projects and things are. So this is my attempt at solving that problem. It's a distributed system. I have lots of moving parts. There's lots of technology in here. There's lots of things to go wrong, which some days is nice and some days gives me more of a headache than I want it to, but that's fine. I intend this to be a product, right? I'm treating it 100% at this point like I want it to be a product. So I'm getting more and more involved, trying to find more and more ways of improving it, and also trying to get more serious about tracking it. We are using an older version of it to track it, to track the work that's been done. So this is the piece that I'm looking at doing today, seeing tasks while into requirements. Most of this should be able to be done completely on the UI. LJ, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. If you have questions, thoughts, opinions on this, if you disagree with something I'm doing, or you've had an experience that you want to share, and you think that I'm being naive or ambitious, you are more than welcome to share your thoughts and opinions. I reserve the right to ignore, but you are more than welcome to share. I do want this to be as much about the conversation and the ability for people to learn from than as I am developing, right? So I don't mind diverting to discussion. Yeah. Bootstrapping your own project. Yeah. So the project is tracking the project. So the way this works is the planning items are from the product management perspective. These are essentially the stories, right? This is now termed as a goal, right? This is the goal of this planning item. The goal of it is a title and a goal, and then it has requirements attached to it. Requirements are, yes, that is the hope, and it has happened so far. So this is the current released version. So you can add in requirements, right? And then requirements are not in the terms of the software; they're in terms of what the product team want to see. Like what are they expecting from this thing? They need to have, like, tasks should update the list. The number of tasks should show when listing requirements. These are things that are requirements of this. What languages do you know? I mean, I've been using C# for 20 years. I've used VB. I've used Delphi. I mean, uh, no, I would say I know no languages. I can get by in most of them. I'm more proficient with C sharp. I think there's always something to learn, right? Especially in, I mean, a lot of what we use these days is not the language, it's the frameworks that we use, right? So like the other day I was using some entity framework stuff. I learned a new thing about how I could use entity framework with SQL, right? These things are the things you have to continually learn. So we spend more of our time in frameworks than we do in actual language stuff. So I am most proficient in C sharp, but I've picked up other languages along the way. You know, and I'm a big believer of also use the language that's most useful for the task ahead of you, right? If you are a Python developer saying, hey, you need to develop this in C sharp, but you can develop it in Python, it doesn't make sense because you're going to be, you want to develop something. You don't want to spend the time learning the new language and the new structures or the alternatives to what you have in Python. You know, are you good with Rust? Yeah. I mean, I have no issues with, I don't think we need to get, I think the word will be tribal right over languages. I think it's, if you feel comfortable in it, use it, but don't, you know, if you're in a product, if you're in a team, if you're in a company, don't be just trying to introduce languages because they're the new hot thing or the new, because it will create problems. Because if you introduce a language or even a framework, it will come with extra cost. You might become the expert, right? You might write something in Rust and be all proud of it, but then you actually then make all your teammates required to learn Rust and the business to start looking for Rust developers, whereas previously they didn't have to, right? So, yeah. So I'm a big believer in using what you are good with, using what you are comfortable with, and you know, I've learned through bitter experience, I suppose, of the cost of doing that, allowing people to go off and do what they want. Yeah, I was actually looking at a Rust stream last night, and they were using a UI framework, and I went to look up the UI framework, and I'm like, so I can add a plus button and a minus button. That's it. I think the documentation is lacking something. But you know, that's one of the, like with .NET as an ecosystem, you can create a lot of things. Rust is a cult. I think any cool language, any major thing that comes along has this like cultist like following around it, right? Where it's like there is no other option. Yeah, it has its pros and cons. If you want to use it, use it. If you have the option to use it to learn from, do it. But one of the things I am going to try at some point when I've got this up and running is building a component in a different language or a different framework, just to prove, look, it can be done. Whether it should be done, yeah. Not to say it isn't good, but it's just being used not because it's right, because people believe it's right. Yeah. But that comes around all the time. That's not new, is it? Right? Anna, hello, good morning, or good day. .NET as an ecosystem is amazing. I think one of those languages where you can do almost everything you want with native frameworks. Yeah, there's a lot of support for a lot of things. It does get you productive straight up. Followed Anna. She is a .NET developer as well. Game developer, engine developer, product developer, the whole gamut, everything developer. And talking about frameworks, then building her own. Everything. So, yes. But yeah, I do want to exercise that option later on of, you know, dropping in, maybe working with some Rust to do some processing and see and do a comparison of, okay, does it actually do anything better? There's also another thing, right? if you're a group of developers working on some software, the language is also going to bring with it familiarity and ease of understanding. If you introduce a new language or a new framework, it becomes difficult to maybe understand the concepts, and you end up with a bunch of comments, and there's all sorts of problems that come with that. Overall on my own, maybe a bit too much. My own mediator for engine. I own a 4K screen. No, this is 2560 by 1440. I think YouTube and Twitch downscale to 1080. Oh, well, OBS is downscaling to 1080p. But on the topic of rolling your own, by the way, we have TBD Friends, which is projects that I work on stream that I share that are done, open to everyone to touch. So on the topic of, this is 2560 by 1440. I found this is the best resolution to play with. Actually, the resolution that you see everything in, I keep it like this all the time. So I found a happy medium of it looks okay on stream. I think no one's complained about size, and it is usable for me all the time. So you talk about rolling your own. Several times on stream, we've gone through the process. We call this one Arbiter. This was a simple mediator. We used AutoFac and Lamar as DI containers for it. So we got this working in .NET 5. So this was just a stream. We just knocked it together. That was the last time we did it. We'd actually done another one previously. Umpire, I think, was another one. Yeah, Umpire, where we had handlers. So, yeah. So we did that. So yeah, it's not, there's definitely no judgment there. I definitely like doing that, but TBD Friends, where we've done some of that stuff. And developers.stream, by the way, yesterday I thought it was Thursday. This was not a good day to wake up and realize, oh, it's Thursday. Oh, I get to work on Liquid Sky. That's awesome. Oh, it's Thursday. Oh, I said tomorrow will be developers.stream because I thought it was Friday yesterday. This sleep thing might not be overrated. Yeah. So developers.stream is another project I am working on Mondays and Fridays. This is an application aimed at trying to help promote developers who stream. So from a discoverability perspective, from an API perspective, we can put tools in there to help understand, oh, this person coming in my stream is a streamer as well. They also develop. They develop on these platforms. You might be able to shout them out or help hook into your bots and stuff. I think you can learn a lot from rolling your own, as long as you realize your self-built code will most likely be less optimized than the biggest used library out there. I think sometimes reinventing the wheel, as it's termed, is useful from an understanding, as you said. I've long held that belief that you shouldn't be afraid to write the code just because someone else has done it and done it better. And it's not just about what less optimized. I've found instances where the stuff I've written is actually cleaner than the stuff when I've gone and looked at the library. But because I've written it myself, I know where to go look in the library. I can answer questions about the library myself that I might not have got to through their documentation or through looking at their own code, because I've done that thing. So understanding the principles of how it works takes away some of the mysticism as well, right? Something like Mediator, you're like, wow, this is amazing. It allows me to send this command and it gets over there. And then you look underneath, it's like, yep, this command goes in that class. It's just a message, right? Yeah, like my discriminated union library is faster and better optimized than one of her. That made me proud. Nice. I don't think I've used discriminated unions explicitly. I think we've been over this before. I've used them, but not knowing that I'm using them, because I don't really pay attention to. I don't pay a lot of attention to names, patterns, things like that. I just write the code that I want to write. And if it reads correctly, then I'm happy. And that's a big focus for me. So anyway, developers.stream Mondays and Fridays. That is a platform. So let's get back to Liquid Sky. The goal here today is to try and list these tasks as I add them. So I think step one is figure out, do I have the code in there? Yeah. Then I learn from viewers what the thing is, and then the name sticks. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I often tell the story. I wrote my own mediator before I knew what mediator was. And then I saw mediator and I'm like, well, mine deals with transactions. So the company I used to work for has basically my mediator library in production because it can deal with rollback. And it's actually, without ever seeing it, without understanding the pattern I was implementing, I built it, and it's actually, from an API perspective, functionally compatible like 90% with mediator. So it could be swapped out with very little effort. However, it doesn't natively support transactions. So you can't say, okay, send this command and also hand off this other command and this command and enroll them in the same transaction in quite the same way. So they can't just swap it out because it would break a lot of functionality. We had a specific edge case that was necessary. Give me a good idea. Uh-oh. Okay. So what I need to learn first is, do I have in any of my services, right, in any queries, do I have the, I need to move these things around as well, which is going to drive me crazy, but we'll leave it for now because that's a bigger problem. Do we have tasks listed? I don't think we do, which means that this might be a little bit more involved than I really wanted to do. You see, projects, attachments, requirements are added here. I think, just from a feeling perspective, that it would be messy to add tasks in here, right? If I did tasks, ID, identifier, title, description, assigned to, right? If I did this, something is nagging that would be too heavy, right? So for every requirement, give every single task that's available for that requirement. So do I pivot that and say, oh, well, I want tasks for a requirement? So that's get all tasks. It is filterable, so I can filter. So let's test. Let's do, is Nitro open? Nitro is open. Okay, so let's get the token. So again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on software development, whether it be mine or others, I'm happy to discuss, happy to chat. The stream does not necessarily need to be about oh no, that's not good. Oh, I created a monster there. Yeah. I've created a monster. Oh well, refactoring time. So what I've done is on my tasks view. So a planning item is a product management tool, right? It's a, hey, here's a thing I have. I want to I want to build this thing, and these are the requirements for building this thing. This is what I expect to see when this thing is done, right? The tasks are the developer component, right? So the tasks live in the task system, right? The tasks are the house, and these are for the developers to pick up. Ultimately, this will filter by team. We'll be able to assign to a team or a member, or both. And the requirements are gone, except they link to the task in this respect, because you want to get the requirement that's driving this task so that you can see the why. Right? That's an important thing we lose track of. Like, why are we doing this task? What is the reason why? So this requirement, linking back to requirement, is a first pass at making sure you understand. Okay, we're updating the tasks. We're doing this. Why are we doing that? Well, I should be able to assign a task from the backlog to a current sprint when I click on a task. Blah blah blah. So this is why we're doing this specific piece. Right. So that's the goal there. However, what I've done is I've made a data object that just doesn't work right. So let's close all that down. Let's minimize that. So my task table is title, description, and then you can assign a requirement to it, right? Because you can have a task that's not assigned to a requirement. Has a status. That's right now a string, is fine. And you can associate it with a sprint and assign it to a user, right? This is it right this second. Great. On the view side, though, the view I've created for tasks is condensing all that information. Right, so I've got requirement title, intended outcome, right, and planning item title. So I've got the requirement and then the planning item that it's linked to involved in that. But I think that's incorrect. I think I need to refactor that view, because I think, let's do this. So joining requirements and planning items here is probably not a good idea, right? I think what I need to do is, let's do a new query. Command Shift L on Mac is the new query window, and on Windows it's Control Shift Q. But if you press Control Shift Q on a Mac, I think it wants to quit stuff, or Command Shift Q or something like that. So I get my keyboard shortcuts messed up all the time. So let's paste that query in there. So it's not impossible to achieve the same thing. I just need to refactor the query a little bit, right? So what I need to do is get rid of these, get rid of that, and add in t.requirement ID, right? I don't like that format, but it's fine. To get the time zones to come out properly, to get them to come out as date time offsets instead of date time fields, because if I pull them out as they are, it will break. So these views work perfectly for getting the dates out in the right format, so I can pass them down to the client in UTC format. That is the method I've learned. So let's modify this view. This is going to break everything. So I should stop running. Let's actually do this. New branch. Can I do... feature, show tasks. against requirement. So let's do this. Let's do this the way that I should have done this, right? What I should have done is assess this. Evaluated, oh, well, we don't have the requirement information for the task. We need to do that. We need to break that out a little differently so we can ask for different information at different points. We should be able to query tasks based upon the requirement. That will also give us the ability to filter by sprint as well. So we could actually potentially condense calls, but that's another problem. So we go into the requirements. Okay, when I add a task, the list should show the current task status. So we need to refactor task view. Task view condenses information, shouldn't create yet another view. Can and use filtering to achieve drop join of requirement running item info task view link requirement ID. Right now, as a team of developers, we could be sitting down going through this. This might be a little bit too granular. We might just leave it at that and understand what it means, but that's again for the team to decide, and that's why these tasks are built to be able to be developer focused. They're not meant to be product focused, but they'll span from a requirement, right? So so product can see, oh, these things are what the team's working on in relation to solving this problem, and reporting upwards can happen based upon requirements rather than technical features. Link requirement ID from view, join extra info in navigation properties. So by joining the requirement as an actual navigational property, I should be able to get to the other stuff. It's funny because it introduces the hey Redrum, how you doing? The problem that I was actually just trying to avoid of having nested queries, but it does give me the flexibility to do it. So, and it makes more sense. Navigation properties. Okay, so that's task number one, right? We then need to update UI, update queries, UI queries to support new view. The view well, changing the view, the query, update right. So we can't. So ultimately, we're going to introduce the concept of task dependency, requirement dependency, etc. Because some of these will matter, and you can see exactly why I need to have the task list in here right now. Right? You can. This is a visualization of the problem that I'm trying to solve. Right? What task did I just add? Oh, I forgot. Oh, I've got to go all the way over here, go here, and refactor task view, update UI. Okay, now we go back here, So that's exactly why. When I add a task to the list to show the current list of the tasks. Okay, so now add list of tasks and requirement. When expanding the requirement, the list of tasks should be queried for the requirement. So in this case, I don't actually need to query the requirement. I just need to query by the ID of the requirement. So I don't need that nesting and stuff. I just need the tasks that are associated with this requirement. And I can also use the same method for sprint. I might actually do that already. Writing filters in GraphQL is not my favorite thing to do. But yeah. So when expanding the requirement, the list of tasks should be queried for the requirement and display title, assigned user, badge. Let's just go with that for now, right? Glow Brambler, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Again, if you're new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions of what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. No need to... If you're finding this productive, just sit and watching me do this, or sit and listen to me do this, then that's perfectly fine. I appreciate that just as much, but don't want people to think that it's all about me doing my thing. I'm here to learn as much as anybody else, so... Okay, when I add the task, the list should show the current task with its status. Right. So that's kind of an interesting wording that I chose, suggesting that, you know, this will break, but when I actually will it? See, this is running in the browser. It's not actually making any data queries, so it doesn't make a difference. So that one won't. That one will. One of these, yeah. This is all data that's loaded, so it doesn't actually depend on the server. So that top one will load indefinitely because it's erroring. However, these are already loaded in the browser, so it doesn't matter. They've got the data. So when I expand this, what I'm saying in the task, in the requirement, is that when I click this button and add it, it should appear. I actually don't specify that when you navigate to the requirement that the list should be there. So what I've just done is tasked it out based upon what I think, not on what it says, right? So this is a case where my task is probably incorrect. What I should have done is question the PM and said, okay, well, when we go to the task, do you want it expanded? Because I'm talking should update the list, right? Pedantic? Maybe. But it's worth clarifying. It always is worth clarifying, because if I implement it as I'm laid out here, then I don't have to show the list. I just made that assumption. And it's not about, it shouldn't be about the developers saving the PMs from themselves or the developers filling it in. It should be that everyone's on the same page, because they actually might have a different expectation there, right? They might have a different design in mind, but we're not speaking about it. So even if you ask the question, they go, you know what I mean, right? You know, just edit the requirement. Just when I navigate to the requirement, when I expand the requirement, existing tasks should show. When I add the task, the list should show the current task with its status, right? It's just, again, being clear, because don't forget that the intention is that these requirements are what the business sees. They're what other people in the business see. These would be, if your CEO or whatever wanted to see where we were with things, right? I can't run it. It won't work. But if the CEO wants to go in and see where are we with the initiatives, okay, well, we've got 4 initiatives in flight. They're ahead of schedule. What sort of things we're working on, and drills down. These should be very clear and without, problem. And QA could test around the requirement, right? QA might not test around a task, but they might test around a requirement. And that's one of the problems we have when we build stories and they become too technical. They're like, oh, QA can't test this, right? It's worth understanding those things and being clear about those things up ahead. But you might actually have several tasks that roll up and QA can test the actual expected outcome. Yeah. Annie, thank you for the look. Appreciate it. Did I miss you before? No. Okay. So we've added 3 tasks, right? The way this works now is what I do is I go and right now mark it ready for development. We're going to move that into prepare for next release. We're going to mark that ready for development and move that into prepare for next release. And that's a bug. It doesn't move into a default status when it gets added in the browser. If I refreshed, it would be in the right status because the server would have picked it up. Need to fix that. Refactor task view, update UI queries to support, add list. So we want to start with this one, right? Let's move that to the backlog for right a second. Okay. So we've tested out a little bit. We've got this expectation. Let's go ahead and do this. So we create the branch. Right. We won't be touching Foundation. Foundation is a library that shares all the events and messages. Sausage and bacon boy. Nice. And let's do the same on this side. Well, I had a sausage sandwich for breakfast. I bet it wasn't as good as what you're going to have, but it was okay. Okay. Let's refactor the query first. So we're going to modify the view. We're going to get rid of each of these. Right. We don't need those columns. We don't need that. What we do need is t.requirement ID. Now that might be null, which is fine. We have an assigned user, an associated sprint ID. Whoa. Okay, so we do that. Modify view. No. Because I don't use migrations because I don't like playing around with migrations, especially early on. So I create scripts for everything. What it means is when I change those sorts of things, I have to be quite diligent about changing that, because if you were to check the code out and try and create a brand new database, you don't want things to work. Okay, so our view is changed. So now everything else is broken here, right? So let's add that. Refactor, remove requirement, planning item directly from task view. Actually, I'm going to line that up. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make it with the actual changes of the code. The SQL is aligned with the code. There's no benefit in doing that apart from this. So we go to view entities. We go to our task here, right? So now we just said we've removed all these fields, right? We add public int requirement ID, right? And now we have an associated sprint. So we have public virtual requirement. Now requirement will have a planning item. Vinny Pucha, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome in. This is the, yeah. I don't like comments. But I will use them to highlight things that do need to be addressed later. I don't like to-dos. To-dos are things you have to action now. That is I don't quite know what to do with that piece particularly. And what I'm doing is I'm waiting to see how this plays out to determine how those numbers work. Because on the current version, what you'll see is if I go to the planning, what should have happened is those haven't tracked yet, but you see these 0, 0, 0s. These are in progress, ready for development, in progress, and completed numbers, right? So these will have numbers next to them. I do think that there's still that concept. I just think I want to show more of a red, yellow, green sort of taskbar as to where the progress is on the thing. So I don't think the numbers necessarily mean very much. Okay, so we've got our requirement ID, we've got our requirement. That will pull from the view. It now means that our query side of things is a bit broken. So what we'll do is we'll start the read-only view up. Read-only view is the gateway necessary to route the requests, and the GraphQL piece, and gateway GraphQL. And the identity, yeah, so it can still authenticate, right? Yes, of course. So again, I can use this piece now. This is a completely separate project. This is not inside of the entire project. So the gateway allows me to route requests into the API or to GraphQL, so I can query out of there. So starting this piece, and this piece allows me to query data and authenticate without having to be able to change anything, which works right now. So if I'm testing queries against the GraphQL component, this is perfectly valid. So what we do is we go over here. Now there's no code changes that I can see other than changing the view entity. Nothing should really be dependent upon that, because the GraphQL side of things here is just literally a straight up tenant ID match. We're good. So what we could do is use this. We actually might already use a filter, so I might actually have an example of this already to work off of. So we go over here now, and let's refresh the schema. Question: in normal REST, you can secure certain endpoints. So just in HTTP filter chain in Spring Boot, you can verify if person can even communicate with known API. How does it work with GraphQL? Same way. Actually, it works a little bit more granular on GraphQL. I can put this authorized, says you have to be authorized to get this request. I can say who can do this. I can actually add roles and privileges. But more than that, I can actually specify at a permission level, a field level, what permission you have. So you could have an administrator be able to query the endpoint and get everything, but a viewer could only query 50% of it. So their schema will be different. So you can make an admin only view, etc. So you can actually control in here. I think it is descriptor.field. F goes to f dot in progress dot there's a permission or something like that. Require authorize. So I can actually specify a policy on an individual field. So it works the same way. So in .NET, you have the authorize attribute, and that says you have to be authorized to get to this data. You have to be authorized anyway because you won't have a tenant identifier if you're not authorized. And we can actually do it at a field level, so you can actually filter. Even this can return only the fields that are allowed by the person requesting it. I don't quite know what happens if you request a field that you're not allowed to request, or whether the intent's more around like the app using it. But it's definitely something I'd like to explore in the future, because that's kind of a cool concept. Okay, so if we go here now and we look at schema, no, where do I want to look? Tasks. ID identifier. We should have requirement ID, but we have requirement. So on requirement, we should have, ID identifier. And we can do planning item, ID identifier, title, intended outcome, right? So we should still be able to query that data. Ooh, invalid column name requirement identifier. I know why that is. Requirement type. So in the configuration, infrastructure configuration view, task. Yeah, requirements view. That's a problem. Yeah, I think I have to change that as well. So modify view. I'm still learning a little bit about what the best way of laying these out are. Now, I chose to use views because it gives me a lot of ability to control some of that data, prepare it all in a way that I can then just query straight out of the GraphQL side, and you know, it is what I want it to be, so I can represent it differently. And the benefit there is clear, right? I can just use the DB context because of projection. I can actually, the query will change based upon what I'm asking for, and I get the benefits of that. So I don't have to pull all the data back from the server, from the SQL server, and then filter it out on the GraphQL side and then pass it down. I can just do that. So this needs public int ID, right? So this is breaking because what was happening is I have an ID and I'm joining requirement on the ID in my mind, but it's actually looking for requirement identifier as a field because it was only keyed on its identifier. To do that in the view, I would have had to add the requirement identifier, which means I would have had to join requirements just to get the identifier. So this will be quicker, and moving more towards just using the schema. But yeah, now in here, I can do descriptor dot ignore F goes to f.id. So this is a no. So even though I'm pulling that out into the data object, etc., I can tell GraphQL never to map it, so you'll never get access to that field. Anyway, so these fields are ignored. So you can get the created by user, you can get the planning item, but you can never pull their ID. So it'll join them, but hide the field it's joined on, essentially. I think that'll still complain about. Yeah. So that should still work. So if you're just joining, what I'm doing is I'm building a I'm building a list of tasks for a requirement. This is a product that I'm building. This is its current iteration. This is its new iteration. This is from a couple of months ago now, but we are using the product to plan the product. So these are actual things that we are working on in here. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask. Okay, so you see that one, the tasks identifier is there. I don't need the ID because it's a root thing, but let's see what happens now. So this should work. Yeah, it started. There you go. So now we have all the tasks. Let's put the title, description in there. And we have the ones with requirements and have planning items. These all join. And if we look at the back end a little bit, where are you? Services? No. Keep losing this. How am I missing it? If we look over here, we will see the query. Select identifier, title, description. Case, yeah, when requirement identifier is not null. Identifier from task view, left join requirements, left join planning items, where tenant identifier. How the heck did I get planning items then? Well, planning items view. Yeah. So we joined those two. So yes, they were joined in my initial view, and I'm still joining them. But now if I don't want them, if I just want the list of tasks, and I run that, now my query is select from task view where tenant identifier. I'm not automatically pulling them in because of task view anymore. So when they were in task view, they were always getting pulled in. Now they're not. So that query is more efficient just to get a list of tasks. If I want a task by an ID, I don't join those extra fields. If I want a task with this requirement, right, and I want the intended outcome, right, I can still do that, and the query will do join requirements, but it won't join planning items, right? So I'm not forcing those extra joins now. So the projection's working quite nicely to give me that. And I expose these as a view because they can never be written to. I can hide details. I can combine details in there and flex that without changing the actual schema. So the schema, one of the reasons I chose to go with this design is these databases here. These are different databases, by the way. They store the data. Their only purpose is storing data. So I don't need to worry about indexes. I don't need to worry about, I don't need to worry about query indexes. I don't need to worry about optimization for query. I don't need to worry about joins because the data is just being inserted into a table and stored. There's no validation against these things. It's just, this is the data. You gave it from the UI. It's valid, right? If you've got an identifier and it's not valid in the system, that's not the problem of this. It's going to store the identifier it was given. The worst that happens is the system is like, no, this doesn't exist. The view combines all these different tables and creates essentially the version of them, But now I can do joins, I can index on things, I can improve things for query. And the so it's all called the view, by the way, which is a confusing name, but the view itself is built around querying the data. So it can be optimized that way. If I was to do search, search would be another component over here. Oh, when I do search, not if, when. So I do like this design. I think that it's got a lot of pros. You know, I'm sure I'll find the cons eventually. That's how most technologies work. You find that they work really well while you've got the good use case for them. But then you find something that bites you later on, which is okay. Okay, so we have this updated. Let's commit that change. We've got the query working. Refactor, remove requirement planning item directly from task view and query. Include as navigation properties. We need to remember what I said before about being disciplined about making sure I go and update the right scripts. So view, views, requirements. Requirements view gets ID to provide cleaner join from tasks and ignored ID in GraphQL query side. Let's go back. Before I do that commit, let's make sure that this isn't exposing any IDs I don't want it to expose. See, the requirement ID is exposed there. So let's stop that from happening. So we go here. We go to our configuration. Let's go to task. No. Let's go to task here. And descriptor.ignore. F goes to f.requirement ID. Right. Let's do that. These are added to GraphQL, by the way. Here, I add the types, and that registers the types, and I can configure things. There's all sorts of stuff that's possible here. Yeah. Okay. Let's validate that. So let's refresh the schema. Okay. No requirement ID, right? So tenant identifier is perfectly fine. That's a shared identifier anyway. The identifier of this object is fine. I alias it as ID because the client uses ID in the entity mapping. ID and identifier are synonymous. In the backend, though, an ID is a primary key on a table. An identifier is a unique identifier for that object in the larger system. So if I have a task in the view, its identifier will be the same as the identifier of the task in the task system, which is its source of truth. However, its ID will be different because it's how it's stored. Tenant identifier, title, description, status, dated, date added, last updated, created by user. So again, these are joins. I can get more information about who created it and who updated it just by adding more expansion there. So I think we're good. There we go. It works. Let's add that in there. The requirements view gets ID. Ignore requirement. ID on task. GraphQL. Commit and push this just to make sure. So that should conclude the server side changes. Let's go to the client. This is going to be more broken, right? because what I've just done is I've broken tasks. Actually, I need to do one more thing on this. I need to do a thing on this. I've enabled filtering and sorting on here as well. So I can actually put things on here. So if I want requirement identifier, ID identifier, let's go with this one. Actually, let's go with this one. Yeah, there's three of them. So I've got to figure out. Okay, there we go. That's how I do this. Got to learn. I'm not. I'm still not. Um, Requirement identifier. Sean good day. How you doing? Tasks. Where is this? What I want? Requirement. Identifier equals. Will that run? Not bad. Just having regretting my decision in reporting infra. Oh, Synapse is great unless your clients want real time data. Oh dear. Is that the clients realized what you were giving them and then went, well, we want it real time? Or they just weren't asked the right question ahead of time? I'm going to believe the former more than the latter. The field title does not exist on the type query. Do I need that? Like, is that still valid query? Field tasks of type tasks must have a selection of subfields. Did you mean tasks? Just want to learn how to filter it. Yes, they like the data, but they don't like waiting for a change to the DB to reflect in their complex reports. Eventual consistency. Well, in that case, it's just eventual, like the data needs to be trickled down, I suppose. Are you talking hours or seconds or minutes? So this, yeah, okay, so that doesn't work. That works. Minutes. If you were fine with even an hour, it would be fine. So is it they make a change, hit report, report doesn't show what they've just changed, then they have to wait a few minutes and then it's there. So because of the amount of data you're crunching, that is not realistic. Can you say, okay, schedule a report and then email them or push them into the browser when it's ready? Like send me the report when ready. Or are they using it just to validate that what they did? Because I've seen that before. Are they using the report to just validate that what they did took? Which is an even worse situation because they don't trust the actual data. Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. How are you doing? The reports have more data than they get on the front end. Yeah. Whoops. Okay, that might be a different sort of problem. Um, so I know you well enough to know that any question I'm about to ask is going to be uh feed. Um, um, hot chocolate, chili cream, GraphQL filtering. The main problem is that we need to pivot question answer data, and this can be near 6K columns to a very niche use case, well, concerned to any of the shift reporting, SHLF reporting infra. Gotcha. Huh. Posts. Um, they don't support anything over 2K. Well, I mean, anyway, the solution was to use Elasticsearch for that part of the report, and that I hope cuts down the real time pre processing needed for building the reports since it will already be normalized. Oh. So so is Synapse a storage solution or is it a what is Synapse? Azure Synapse? Is a node based architecture? Ah, just distributed database. Okay. ETL service, you need to move Cosmos DB into an OLAP. Gotcha. Um, yeah. Now, the fact that they have more data in the report, so they're relying upon the report to give them more information that the UI doesn't provide them, but it doesn't provide them because it is slow to deal with. From what you're saying there, right? It's not that you could even produce that data into the UI for them in real time either. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to learn how to query where, let's do title equal starts with use. Okay. Okay, so now let's do where requirement ID identifier equals there you go. We don't have resources to do all that yet. Moving the data to UI. Also, they like Excel spreadsheets. Most of our clients move their paper scholarships into our product. We got to talk to Mr. Mojo. He's an expert with Excel. Pretty much in the same field you're in, if I understand. Oh, not exactly. You're both in education. Okay, there we go. There's our query. So this will allow us to get tasks by requirement. And I'm hoping, you know that effort I went through that I said, hey, look, we can I have sprints. Uh, yeah, it's fine. Uh, Luckily, I don't have to worry about that part. Our clients give us their 30-page application, and our customer service team adds it to the product. We just built an awesome form builder to make it easy. Gotcha. Figure out. I've got to take the time to move this around. I got to get in touch with Camille and see if I can't get some help with structuring an organization. I think my use of stores is okay, but because I'm probably not understanding the full use case, I'm ending up with more mess than I really want to do. So, planning, demo, initiatives, tasks, stores. I move the sprint store over here. Okay. With read, fetch all, task dashboard, tasks dashboard. Services, sprint service, cache first. Oops. Boards. Sprint board. We'll go and get load by sprint. Okay. Hey, Des. How you doing? All right, it's nice. uh, yeah, another technology to get better at as I go. So that load by sprint that then was. Oh no, I do fetch by sprint. I do it. I do it already. Yes, I already was doing that. So this shouldn't break. That's almost identical query. I just needed it for the requirements. That's awesome. If he's going to need that method, fetch by requirement. Requirement. There you go. That's fine. Well, famous last words. Yeah. Basically, yeah. That's essentially what I want, but it's not really in the right place for it either. So, but anyway, one of the things that I did have I had on this before was the existing behavior should not break. Right? Watch. That's what I need to focus on first. That no breakages occur. So we refresh here. Right. So I can still see requirements, right? All this still is functioning. If I go into this side of the place, this will be totally broken because I'm asking for fields that don't exist. Right. So I would imagine actually, yeah, I've got some errors. So I need to fix these. Nagging feeling. Uh, um, sorry, I just need to check in my calendar, make sure I wasn't missing something there. I had a nagging feeling that I was missing a work thing. I'm good. Okay. Oh, okay. So we can still achieve if we want to do it this way, right? So task is a model, right? Task has a requirement identifier, which is probably not correct. Task has requirement, which is a requirement, right? And it doesn't need those things on it anymore, right? That's more accurate of what we get. The problem with doing that is now this the tasks service we just modified fetch by requirement in fetch one here you can see is pulling those fields, but I want requirement ID identifier um, title intended outcome planning item ID identifier title, right? So yeah, now this is where I think my usage of signal stores is bad because I've got data that's actually in, I've got a requirement store and I've got a planning item store. I don't believe it's right to create one big store, but should I be joining this data in here or, you know, should I be storing it elsewhere? I don't know right this second. And why are you throwing a fit? Okay, that should be fine. So we should at least be able to fetch them. Property planning item identifier does not exist on type task. Is this a different task? No, that's that one. Oh, because now the code's bad. Task detail component. So tasks detail. Right. So now when we pull that task out, those fields are now incorrect. So let's go here. If requirement, we do requirement title. So that can be that. Requirement dot intended outcome. Conversion of title task dialog component. Add task dialog. Required. Why? Oh, because I pass it as a. Oh, that was nice in that case. Requirement is ID this dot requirement identifier. So that breaks there. That's going to break the service in the back end. Right now I'm very concerned about just kind of cascading down a bunch of changes that really aren't correct. So you can see add task. I just call straight add in there and I take requirement ID. Right. Same way I do the assignment. So it's more consistent. There's no challenge there, but it's still task detail component HTML. That should work now. So we have this. Still breaking. That's working. That's good. Assign to. Assign to is a bit busted. But we have the requirement, so it's not totally busted. And being that there's got a requirement on it. Oh, that's interesting. That's kind of fascinating. Simple task. This is a simple task. Let's see on the requirement eventually. Assign to Alan. Did it error? Did it work? Oh, calls error. That's because the back end isn't up yet. That's fine. So we at least tried to post it. That's really all I cared about there. So the requirement identifier was stored. So I didn't break that. But why does this not work? There should be a backlog. There should be a big backlog of items. Yes, let's refresh. So network, GraphQL. Ah, there we go. So our tasks query is broken. That's interesting that it showed at once though. So features, tasks, backlog, components, task detail, task table. Asked about REST and GraphQL security topic and then she started talking, my internet cut out. Oh man. No worries. Is it stable enough? Do you want me to show you again? So we need to go to the task service. There we go. Yep, no worries. 1 second, I'll just get this in place and then requirement. Title intended. Let's do ID identifier. Intended outcome and planning item. Let's see. That was healthier. There you go. That was a bit healthier. Do you get what you need now? Oh, well, this works too now. Not wholly, but it does work. Notice the missing data. So so right now they're using slightly different detail. The backlog and the board is using slightly different detail. Requirement item dot requirement dot title requirement dot intended outcome. There we go. Okay, so that's almost back to how it was. That was a key requirement, remember? Being able to do that before we moved on. Okay. If we assign that to a sprint, test sprint flow, that should go away. That's not right. That broke. Walk works with that. Looks like that you expose a lot on script level. On the other hand, if you have proper return type for REST request, then it's still visible what type of data you get in return. So GraphQL supports authorize just the same way API requests do. So I can use authorize. So in .NET, this is how you'd authorize an API endpoint, right? You can put roles in there, you can put permissions, whatever's in the token, you can use that. So this is just generally you have to be logged in to see it for that tenant. So yeah. So that's how you authorize the endpoint. But with GraphQL, I can also authorize at this level as well. So I can authorize on a field level. So I can say this. Actually, I can just do it here. So if I don't want to expose, if I want to expose the underlying ID, I can actually do authorize here and be more granular about those permissions. So an admin would see it, but a regular user wouldn't do. So you can actually expose on a field by field level the authorization. So, and that's what gives you the ability to like flex uh, the endpoint more, because you can expose a lot of data, but some of it would not be available to non-admins or whatever. So you wouldn't even ask for those queries. And yeah, you end up with, oh, I'm an administrator, I use this query, or I add the admin fields. But on the client side, I don't know if you'll have seen it, you don't have to use. So here I've got all this list of fields, right? And then like here, I, by these are common fields that I have, right? So what I can actually do is, and I do it in the planning items, planning item service. We actually have a default planning item fields, which is actually this fragment. So I can actually build fragments and compose those things. So I don't have to keep repeating them over and over again and missing them. So I could actually have an admin fragment and a regular user fragment and have different sets of fields coming from GraphQL. You're also using some framework for C#. Yeah, I'm using a framework called Hot Chocolate by Chili Cream for GraphQL. I think it's pretty much the de facto framework for providing GraphQL from .NET. But yeah, I can authorize just the same way I can an API, and I can authorize the fields. For me, it's like another world. Yeah. I mean, code's code though, right? The concepts remain the same. How they're implemented, how they're why don't you use CodeGen? CodeGen for producing the queries? Welcome back, Machine. You for building models on the client or what? So let's try this again. Let's try that. Why do you ruin my list? It's the cause error that caused it. Okay. Let's try that. Let's try that probably. Yeah. This is my first time really trying to use GraphQL, so I haven't really dug into what's possible. I've enjoyed building stuff. From the client side, that's my weaker area. Maybe there's things I can learn. Well, no, there's always things I can learn. It's not maybe. Your particular way of doing some of this? The challenge I have, and I'm always going to have building something this complicated as a solo developer, is there's a lot of technology in here and a lot of things to learn and use. I might be comfortable with building this overall. I might be experienced in building certain components of it. But if I want to really use what I'm trying to demonstrate is using the right technology, sometimes takes a little bit more time to get right, and how it fits in, and throughout the course of developing this over the last 14 months, 15 months, however long it is now, and I've demonstrated we can change things, we can move things around, we can learn new things, we can tweak things without having major impact on the system. And even if it does have a major impact, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I'm always looking to learn more about using the technologies better. So if you have some hints or tips there. That would be awesome. Okay, let's just validate that that is not a new bug. And that this is just because it errored, which is an interesting side effect. Yeah. If you are new to the stream, if you've not been here before, I am building a product management platform for planning and software development and words. Um, the goal being to keep the planning and requirements gathering in as organized a state as possible without it actually looking like it's real work to be done, and the real work to be done being generated by development teams and planning out the actual aspects of what needs to be done, and then being able to represent that to the product team uh, and their progress without actually being asked all the time, where are we with X? Where are we with Y? Do 180 of my questions. Was meaning to ask you about PCs again. Would you recommend trying out building PC or ordering it from the shop? Keep in mind, in my case, I never placed CPU on motherboard, applied thermal paste or any of that. Even less I know about liquid cooling, not even mentioning choosing the PC parts that I would need. If you are not confident that you could learn enough by watching a few YouTube videos and kind of follow along, I mean, Gamers Nexus, Jay's 2 Cents, even Linus Tech Tips, um, they're all going to have reasonable demos of doing some of this stuff over time. It is not difficult to drop a CPU into a motherboard. The instructions are very, very clear on those things, by the way. If you are scared, it's not impossible. The instructions that come with these things are then, yeah, I mean, it is pretty hard to make a mistake as long as you're aware of what you're doing, plan it out, prep it, make sure you're in a clear work surface, that you've got plenty of space and time and light. Light is very important. um, um, but you know, for reference, this PC that I've got here, I didn't have enough space. I just had a CPU upgrade a couple of weeks ago. I didn't have enough space. I unplugged it, pulled it onto my lap, took the cooler out, took the CPU out, put the new CPU in, put the cooler back in, and put it back. Not ideal to be doing that on your lap. Um, it's working, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. What are you? Oh, there we go. There it's loading. This screen needs redoing. It's driving me crazy. Thermal paste, yeah. Um, yeah. So, um, yeah. So AMD CPUs up until the AM5 platform had pins which you could bend. Intel used to have pins, then they went away from it and went to a. The pins are actually in the board and come up when you lock the CPU in place. So there's no pins to bend now. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, it's a bit nerve wracking, without a doubt. The first time, um, you're gonna pay more for a pre built machine. Um, no, but yeah, I'd recommend watching a bunch of videos, and seeing how comfortable you are. And if you're still not comfortable after watching people like Linus, uh, the way he treats some of those, if you watch his videos and you still think you're scared of breaking something, buy a pre-built. um, yeah, building a lot of the stuff up, putting the RAM on, sometimes putting the fan on before can help. Putting the cooler on the CPU, depending on if you're doing liquid or whatever. Um, But when you put the motherboard into a case, generally those CPU power connectors at the top of the motherboard are in a really tricky place to get to. So if you put the cooler on before you put the motherboard in, yeah, if you've got larger hands, that is not fun. The tasks will show in the backlog of tasks, and then the updates will work fine, right? Okay, that worked. Well, power supply, I would always go with the best quality power supply you can afford. Don't cheap out. If you're planning on putting a big graphics card in there, you're going to need a big power supply. Definitely do not cheap out. Do not buy some crap off AliExpress and wonder why your graphics card, set on fire. Yeah, I'd highly recommend watching a bunch of videos, seeing how they do it. Yeah, I learned a long time ago not to cheap out. If I'm going to build a PC, spend the money that I can spend and buy the best system I can with the money I can afford, but balance it out right. So if it means saving $100 for a better graphics card, but I'm going to take a worse power supply, either save a little longer and get both, or go with the lesser graphics card and better power supply. Because, yeah, things happen. Okay, so we're not quite as far, but we are to the point. If we go back over here to Liquid Sky. So let's go. I just realized what time it was. So I started this out with refactor the task view. Task view condenses information. We shouldn't create yet another view. We can consolidate behavior and use filtering to achieve. Drop join of requirement planning item. Link requirement ID from review. Join extra info and navigation properties. So you can already see, even though I tried to plan that out really carefully, there was a bunch of other stuff that I didn't do, right? That I didn't account for in there. And that's with knowing what the code's doing. And this is one of the problems with throwing out estimates. If you're working with software and you're building estimates based upon what you know, even though you've written every single line of code in the system, there's still those little cases on the edges. There's still the little pieces I needed to fix that. Oh, well, the knock-on impact of changing out requirement ID, well, it created the need to create a difference on the requirement query, right? I had to join differently. I had to modify that view. Those things weren't things I tracked and things that I thought needed to be done, but they are knock-on effects. So even with detailed planning, or relatively detailed planning, I still was far off the mark. So it's why, don't say, oh, I'll get that done in an hour. I mean, I got it done in 2 hours with a lot of chat and a lot of back and forth. But it's worth making sure that you are comfortable and asking questions. And that's what this product is built to encourage, right? It's built to encourage product teams to build a list of meaningful requirements for the developers to pick up. It's built for the developers not to actually create any actual work that they're not comfortable with. So product teams are not going to be tasking this out, right? When it comes time for ready for planning, like, I'm not really following my own workflow because it's really hard to put on both hats, right? So when I was tasking out, that was ready for planning, right? Now it's in progress, right? The product team is not tasking it out. The product team is saying, hey, here's what I want. Can you go off, look at this, tell me what you think, and size those things? And this will allow, by providing this design, what I hope to do is allow development teams to be a little bit more clear and ask more questions up front. Like I said about the requirements, right? The requirement was a little vague. When I expand the requirement, existing tasks should show. When I add the task, the list should show the current task with its status. There was more to it than that. Just to get to this piece, I had extra tasks. So it wasn't just a case of slapping a list next to a card, right? there was more to it. But because I understood that, I understood the system, I understood what the code was doing, I understood that this was a little bit more of an ask once I took a glance. So I pushed back on the product team and I was like, okay, well, we need to do this, this, and this. By the way, here's the cost. And it doesn't matter if the business agrees with that or not, it was necessary to do. And by tasking it out, by building out those individual tasks, I'm actually highlighting, okay, these are the actual pieces that need to be done. This is, and it gives us that encouragement as developers to not try and just stuff everything in. Because if I just tried to take this as a story, right? Let's say in Jira, we have a story for showing a list of tasks, right? If that's just the story, and I put a 3 on that because I think it's done in a day, but then I realize, oh, there's a whole lot more. Also attachments, right? I'd want UI, UX. I'd want to ask those things. So the idea of this product is to very much encourage product teams and development teams to meet at the point of planning, to say, here's what we expect, here's what we're going to do, that's your estimate, and then show progress. So as tasks get burned down, as tasks that are completed, this would update and show that, so that the product team can go in and say, okay, this planning item, we could show a percentage, we could show, the status, I think, is going to be more malleable. But we can show those things and be clear about those things from a product perspective without going into the nitty-gritty of where the code is. But then from release perspective, you can use the planning side of things rather than the task side of things. So the actual work is not what's getting, it's not responsible for showing the release. The release would happen on the other side. So we did this piece, right? We refactored the task view. We got the information organized properly. We validated that. Yeah, so we did this and this, right? So we refactored the task view, and then we update the UI queries to do that and complete that all in one go, right? Refactor, change queries, tasks to include requirement, updated UI components to support change structure. That's it. And there we go. So we are set up for future success. We have prepared the groundwork to get a list of tasks for requirements. So now when this expands, we'll load the list of tasks and show them in here. So when we add a task, we can just update that task list there. Okay. There is a Discord attached to the stream. It's listed in the cards below, both on YouTube and on Twitch. If you have more questions, if you have thoughts, opinions, if there's things you want to share, like well, seeing if you're still around, right? The GraphQL queries. I'd love to learn more about how you might use the tooling, what you would do from a generation perspective to generate the queries. Have you looked at that? Is that something you're looking to learn? Is that something that, I could actually use to investigate how to make this process a little clearer and a little cleaner on the client side, right? Jump in the Discord. You don't have to join the voice chats. We do have voice chats several times a week at random times. The people are more than welcome to join in. It is limited. There's a 6-person limit on the voice chat to try and avoid clutter, but we don't often come close to that. Be more than welcome to join the Discord as well if you have anything further. But tomorrow I will be back with developers.stream development. So Mondays and Fridays I'm working on developers.stream. which is a platform I'm building to try and support developers who stream through tooling, through discoverability, etc. So that will be Fridays, and it is Friday tomorrow, right? I didn't mess that up again. It's definitely Thursday today. So why the disclosure indicators on different sides, and one is right down, other is up down. Disclosure indicators. And hi, Cyber Benny. How you doing? Oh, you mean hold on. The expansions, you mean? That's up down, that's right down. That's a good point. It's a very good point. UI UX is not my strong point. I am looking to try and find someone who is very good at UI UX that might help me with this project a little bit more. To try and work with to get some designs that are more consistent and more clear. But that is I hadn't noticed that, to be honest. I mean, this expands out here. This does. I mean, yeah, you could argue the same. It's actually the control. To be honest, it's the actual way the control is built. This is how they lay these out. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, UI UX is a weak point for me. One I am um, trying to figure out how to get better. Okay. However, if you like this sort of stuff, if you enjoying hanging out and talking about these sorts of technologies, you know, there is a lot more to talk about. I do a lot more on stream. The project I'm working on Fridays, Mondays and Fridays is developers.stream. That is using Blazor and Aspire. We are building up an actual platform that will be open source, and all that code will be available. This code is not available. This is a product that I am building. So this is closed source. There are some open source components, and I'm always happy to talk about open sourcing specific pieces of the technology um, if people are interested. But yeah, that will be me today. I would recommend it again if you do like .NET content. One Lion is another .NET streamer. There's many more that are awesome. One Lion streams Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and is a fantastic developer. Works on his work stuff, which is very interesting to see actual work stuff. This is an intended product, right? But it's not work because right now it can be whatever I want it to be. I can change it, right? I'm not dealing with crazy requests from clients, etc. Not always crazy. That's probably negative to say. But if you like .NET content, One Line is definitely worth a follow as well. However, we are going to go and raid Mr. Fullbot today. So I will be back tomorrow with Liquid Sky with developers.stream. Fullbots released his first game on Monday to Steam called Block Shop. It's a very fun little puzzle game. It's not it doesn't cost a lot, but it is I'm going to get the value out of that, I can tell, because it is a very good little puzzle game. Um, however, so we're gonna go raid him. He's only just starting, but he'll appreciate the raid. So thank you for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again soon. Bye all.